Imagine this. You start a company in your parents' garage. You work day and night, pouring your heart and soul into building something revolutionary. And finally, success. Your company becomes a global sensation. But one day, you're fired. Kicked out of the very company you built. Sounds painful, right? That's exactly what happened to Steve Jobs. But in his lowest moment, he discovered his true strength. He came back and changed the world forever. This is the inspiring story of Steve Jobs, from a college dropout to a tech legend. Steve Jobs was born in 1955 in San Francisco. Right from birth, he was given up for adoption. Fortunately, he was taken in by a humble couple, Paul and Clara Jobs. From a young age, Steve was fascinated by technology. He would spend hours in the garage with his adoptive father, tinkering with electronics, trying to understand how they worked. But here's something most people don't know. Steve was a difficult child. In school, he was known for being restless, always questioning things. He even got kicked out of class for asking too many questions. When Jobs enrolled at Reed College, he quickly realized that traditional education wasn't for him. It felt boring and irrelevant to his dreams. So, after just 6 months, he made a bold decision. He dropped out. But here's the twist. Instead of quitting learning altogether, he started exploring things that truly fascinated him. One of those was a calligraphy class. Sounds trivial, right? But years later, this class would change the world. When Jobs designed the first Macintosh, he incorporated beautiful fonts, something no computer had before. If not for that calligraphy class, our computers today might still be stuck with dull, lifeless text. In 1976, Jobs and his friend Steve Wozniak started Apple in a tiny garage. With almost no money, they built their first computer, the Apple I. Who would have guessed? In just a few years, Apple went from a small startup to $1 billion company. Then in 1984, Jobs introduced the Macintosh, the first personal computer with a graphical user interface. It was groundbreaking. But by 1985, conflicts within Apple's leadership reached their peak. The board saw Jobs as too difficult to control. And then, the unthinkable happened. Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple. Imagine that. You build something from nothing, give it everything, and then get thrown out. Jobs later admitted this was one of the most painful moments of his life. But here's what makes a true visionary. He didn't give up. Instead, he started a new company called Next, which, in an ironic twist, was later acquired by Apple. During his time away from Apple, Jobs made another bold move. He bought Pixar, a tiny animation studio with big dreams. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the first ever fully computer-animated movie. It revolutionized the entire film industry. Apple was on the brink of collapse until 1997 when Steve Jobs returned. In just a few years, he launched the iMac, iPod, iTunes, and finally, the iPhone. When the iPhone was unveiled in 2007, people were stunned. A phone with no physical buttons? Crazy. But today, every smartphone follows Apple's lead. In 2011, Steve Jobs passed away after a long battle with cancer. But his impact lives on, from the iPhones we use every day to the way we think about innovation. Steve Jobs taught us one thing: never be afraid of failure, because failure isn't the end, it's the beginning of something greater. Like, subscribe and comment.